I was 17 years old, standing over a penalty spot in a final I had no business being on the pitch for, and the only thing I could think about was a notebook hidden inside my gym bag, 40 meters away in a locker that wasn't even mine. The referee blew his whistle. 60,000 people went quiet at the same time, the way a stadium only goes quiet when something is about to be decided forever. My captain, Ethan Caldwell, walked up beside me to hand me the ball, the way captains do, a small gesture of trust before the biggest kick of my life. I took the ball from his hands. I did not look at the penalty spot. I looked at him, and I said the sentence that I had been carrying in my chest for 4 months. That sentence changed everything that happened afterward, for him, for me, and for a man who was not even in the stadium that night. My name is Liam Parker, and before that final, almost nobody outside our academy knew who I was. I grew up 2 streets from Greenfield Stadium, in a neighborhood where every boy either supported Kingsbridge FC or pretended to because their fathers did. My own father drove a minibus on the Camden line and never missed a home match if he could help it. He used to tell me that Kingsbridge was not the richest club in the country and never would be, but it had a heart, and the heart could beat longer than money could last. I believed him completely, mostly because the first professional footballer I ever loved, Oliver Grant, wore our colours for 11 years and never once talked about leaving for a bigger club. Ollie was 34 the season everything fell apart for him, and I was 13. He was not just our best striker, he was the reason half the boys in my street picked up a ball in the first place. He used to stay after training to work with the youth teams, and he was the one who first told our academy coach that I had something worth developing. I remember him crouching down at the edge of the training pitch, telling me that talent was cheap and appetite was expensive, and that I should spend mine wisely. I was 13 and I did not fully understand him. I understood him a year later, when everything about him disappeared from the club in the space of 11 days. It happened before a league match against Riverside FC, our oldest rivals. Ollie failed a doping control after the game, a banned stimulant found in his blood in a small amount, enough to trigger an automatic 6-month suspension under federation rules. The club's statement was 3 sentences long. It said the player took full responsibility, that Kingsbridge FC condemned any violation of anti-doping regulations, and that his contract, which had one. I made my way up through the age groups slowly, the way most of us do, without any of the noise that follows the boys everyone expects to become stars. By 17, I was training with the first team twice a week and playing for the under-19 side otherwise, mostly as a substitute, occasionally starting when the coach wanted to rest a starter for a cup match nobody important was watching. Ethan Caldwell was the first team captain that whole time, a central defender who had joined Kingsbridge the same summer Ollie left, and who by 17 years of age I still barely knew. He was polite to me in the corridors. He remembered my name, which surprised me, since captains are not obligated to remember the names of academy players who fetch balls during first-team shooting practice. But there was something in the way he was polite that felt careful, almost rehearsed, like a man stepping around a hole in the floor that only he could see. I noticed the first strange thing in October, 7 months before the final. We were doing a video session as a squad, reviewing clips from an old cup run for scouting purposes, and one of the analysts accidentally played a clip from 4 seasons earlier, back when Ollie still wore our number 9. Half the room laughed, remembering old goals. Ethan did not laugh. He got up, said he needed water, and did not come back until the clip had finished and a new one had started. Nobody else seemed to notice. I noticed because I had spent years noticing everything about the people who had known Ollie, hoping one of them would eventually explain what actually happened to him. The second thing happened in December, when our long-serving team doctor, Edward Hayes, was preparing to retire. He had treated 3 generations of Kingsbridge players, and he liked me, mostly because I always showed up early for injury checks, instead of skipping them like some of the older players did.
On his last week at the club, he pulled me aside after a scan and said something I did not understand at the time. He said that in medicine and in football, the person who gets caught is not always the person who is guilty, and that I should be careful about whose name I let get attached to my own supplements and treatments, because paperwork outlives memory. I asked him what he meant. He said he had already said too much, and that some things were not his story to tell. I thought about that sentence for weeks afterward, and could not make it fit anywhere. Until March. In March, my uncle Thomas, who worked in the equipment and logistics department at our training facility.
It was a supplement log, dated the week before the Riverside FC match 4 years earlier, written in a hand I had seen 100 times on team sheets and starting 11 announcements. It listed a daily dosage under the initials OG, along with a compound name I did not recognize, and a note at the bottom that read, in English, "Do not log this one with the official kit. Keep it separate. Tell him it is the usual." The handwriting belonged to Ethan Caldwell. I sat with that piece of paper for a long time before I understood what it might mean. I was not a chemist, and I did not know if the compound listed was the same one that had ended Ollie's career, but the coincidence of the date, 1 week before the positive test, and the instruction to keep it off the official record was not something I could explain away as nothing. I did not go to the club with it. I was 17, a fringe player nobody would believe over a captain with 11 years at the club, and I had no proof of what the compound actually was or who had given it to Ollie to take. I kept the notebook in my gym bag for 4 months, through winter training and into spring, telling myself I would decide what to do with it once I understood more. I never understood more. I only carried it, the way you carry a stone in your pocket that you keep meaning to throw into the sea. The season built toward the National Cup final almost without me noticing, because I was not expecting to play any real part in it. We eliminated 3 top-flight sides on the way, including a memorable extra-time win over the previous champions, and by May the whole city had cup fever, the kind that makes minibus drivers argue with strangers about formations. Our opponents in the final were Ironbridge FC, a club with more money and a squad full of internationals, and almost every prediction gave them the trophy. I was named as a substitute for the final mostly because our first-choice backup forward had picked up a hamstring injury in the last league match, which meant I was suddenly 1 injury away from playing in front of 60,000 people in the biggest match our club had reached in a decade. The match itself was tense from the first whistle, low on chances, high on fouls, the kind of final.
I do not fully know why Ethan chose me. Maybe he genuinely believed what he said about my nerve. Maybe, after everything I would learn about him in the next few minutes, some part of him wanted to hand the most important kick of the night to the boy he had spent 4 seasons quietly avoiding, as if trusting me with something enormous might balance something he owed and had never paid. I did not think about his reasons in that moment. I only knew that both teams had scored 3 of their first 4 kicks, that Ironbridge FC's 5th taker had just put his shot against the crossbar, and that if I scored, the National Cup belonged to Kingsbridge FC for the first time in 11 years. Ethan walked the ball up to me himself, which is not something captains usually do, and placed it in my hands instead of leaving it on the spot for me to collect. It was a gesture, I think, meant to look like encouragement. 60,000 people were still not making any sound at all. I took the ball from him, and instead of walking straight to the spot, I stood there and looked at him. I told him I had found Ollie's notebook in March, in a box my uncle had pulled out of storage. I had read the supplement log taped inside the back cover in his own handwriting, dated 1 week before the positive test that ended a career he had watched happen from 3 meters away for 4 straight seasons. I told him that I did not know exactly what was in the compound he had written down, and that I was not accusing him of anything I could not prove. But I told him that I knew he remembered writing it, and that I knew why he had spent 1.5 years avoiding a boy who had done nothing except admire the man he may have helped destroy. I told him that if he wanted me to take this kick with a clear head, he owed me the truth before I placed the ball down, because I was done carrying a stone that belonged to him. Ethan did not answer immediately. For a few seconds he looked like a man being asked to hold his own weight after standing on someone else's legs for years. Then he said, quietly enough that only I could hear it over the crowd beginning to murmur at the delay, that the compound had been a legal recovery supplement when he first started giving it to Ollie off the books, something a nutrition consultant outside the club had recommended to him privately 2 seasons earlier, and that he had kept giving it to Ollie as a favor between friends long after that consultant quietly changed suppliers without telling either of them the formula had changed. He said he found out about the new formula only after the positive test came back, and that by then Ollie had already accepted full responsibility publicly, refusing to name anyone else because he did not want a scandal to take his captain and best friend down with him. Ethan said he had let that silence stand for 4 years because admitting it meant admitting he had destroyed the career of the man who had trained him as a young player, and that every single day since had felt like a debt he did not know how to repay. I asked him why he chose me for this penalty out of everyone on the bench. He said because he reminded me of Ollie more than anyone he had coached against.
The referee walked over and told us both, not unkindly, that we needed to finish this now. I placed the ball on the spot myself. I did not do it for Ethan. I did not do it to win a trophy for a club that had let a good man disappear without asking a single hard question. I did it because Ollie once told me that appetite was expensive and I should spend mine wisely. And I decided, standing over that ball, that I was done spending mine on anger I could not use for anything. I struck it low to the goalkeeper's left. It went in. The stadium exploded the way stadiums do, and my teammates ran toward me, and for about 90 seconds I let myself be lifted onto shoulders I did not entirely trust, in a moment I could not fully enjoy, because the only person I wanted to look at was standing apart from the celebration, near the center circle, not moving. What happened afterward did not resolve itself in one night, and I am glad it did not, because a story like this deserves more than a quick, easy ending. 2 days after the final, I gave the notebook to Henry Bennett, not to the press, and told him everything Ethan had told me on the pitch. The club opened an internal review rather than a public scandal, partly because the statute of limitations on the original doping case had already passed, and partly because Ollie himself, when the club finally reached out to him for the first time in 4 years, said he did not want a public trial either. He wanted his name formally cleared in the Federation's private records, and he wanted to know why nobody had told him the truth sooner. Both of those things happened over the following months. Ethan was stripped of the captaincy and given a lengthy suspension by the club's own disciplinary board, not the Federation, since no rule had technically been broken by him personally, only trust. He accepted it without appeal. Ollie did not forgive Ethan quickly, and I do not think he has fully forgiven him even now. But 3 months after the final, the club offered him a position coaching our under-17 academy side, the age group I had come up through, and he took it. I see him most mornings. He does not talk about the notebook, and neither do I mostly. Some Saturdays after training, he tells me that appetite is still expensive, and that I am still learning how to spend mine wisely.
Ethan came to the academy once in October to apologize to Ollie in person, not on a pitch in front of